You all know there are hundreds of betting sites out there, but don't be fooled. Some sites are legal in some states only, some sites pay in Bitcoin, and some sites have even been hacked. However, BetUS has been in business for over 30 years. They have future bets that are paying out in the thousands, and there's still time for you to bet on the Super Bowl, the National Championship, and even the NBA Championship. Just use the QR code right here, and it'll take you to the BetUS site. BetUS. Check it out and bet responsibly. Are you a fellow car guy? I have a 2008 Ford Mustang GT convertible, and nothing makes me happier in that car than when it's nice and clean. And you know who helps me get there? RevAutoCarCare.com. They help me get that pony looking as nice and shiny and ready for any of the car meetups that are all around the great city of El Paso. Spoil your car and go to RevAutoCarCare.com/Tipton and view all the inventory they have and find out what works for you to help make your ride shine. RevAutoCarCare.com/Tipton. Use promo code Tipton33 at checkout to save 15%. It is the Tipping Point with Mike Tipton. We are live on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, and of course on Roku via National Streaming Sports. Shout outs to our friends over at National Streaming Sports for dealing with and putting up with all the stuff that we do here with the Tipping Point with Mike Tipton. Of course, we are brought to you by our friends over at RevAutoCarCare.com. That's RevAutoCarCare.com. Use promo code Tipton33. Save up to 15% on all of your car care needs. And, of course, our friends over at MyHappyNuts.com, www.MyHappyNuts.com. Tomorrow, we will be debuting the new commercial, getting you ready for Valentine's Day. Guys, take care of yourself with My Happy Nuts, www.MyHappyNuts.com/Mike Tipton. Save anywhere from 15 to 30% on all their variable packages that they have over at myhappynuts.com. All right, now let's go ahead and jump into it. All the sports news and stuff of the day. The 3 MVPs have been named, or I guess the 3 MVP finalists, rather, have been named here. And they are Saquon Barkley, they are Josh Allen, and they are Lamar Jackson. Obviously, that's a surprise to nobody if you've been watching the entire season. But it feels like Saquon's more than likely not going to get it. We don't value running backs the way that we should. Fox actually had, or maybe it was ESPN, had I guess a show, something of that, where they basically had Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry talking about how the value of the running back was changed and how they took it upon themselves to make sure that they brought back the value of the running back to that to the prestige that it needs to be at, right? Because we saw Derrick Henry, who is arguably one of the best running backs in the NFL, was not valued where he should be at simply because the NFL isn't valuing running backs anymore, right? Like that, it's just something they're not doing as we've moved on to a more pass-heavy type offense. And then you see Saquon Barkley going to Philadelphia, what he's able to do within that offense and changing things up for the Philadelphia Eagles. Then you see what Derrick Henry is able to do whenever he goes to Baltimore. And granted, Baltimore didn't live up to expectation this year, but they had a much more dynamic offense. Lamar Jackson didn't have to do it all. And that's really what you want, is you want that running back who can be your safety valve, who can change the way that your team is guarded. You don't want to be the one-dimensional team in the NFL. You cannot be that way anymore, right? Like, you've got to have all three facets of the game on lock. And that's what having Saquon Barkley and that's what having Derrick Henry does. Saquon Barkley being an MVP candidate, that's because he had over 2,000 yards this year. Yes, he played 16 games. He could have and more than likely would have broken Eric Dickerson's record if they played Saquon Barkley in the last game. There was just no need to. And that shows you the type of guy he is, where he says, look, I'll put my personal accolades to the side and I will do what is best for the team. To me, he should be the MVP, right? Like the way that he changed Philadelphia really, really helped out the Eagles. Obviously, now they're in the NFC Championship game. It gave them something to rely upon. Where if you tried to stack up against Jalen Hurts, now you had to be able to get, like now you have to try to guard the entire Eagles offense because now it's not just Jalen Hurts back there. Now you've got Saquon Barkley, right? Augustine over on X saying, yes, those two running backs are amazing, but let's put credit where it is deserved on the O lines. Again, I agree with you 100%. I believe it was Medusa Designs that had put out a post on Facebook the other day that said, let's start like normalizing giving offensive linemen MVP votes, right? Because that to me, like Augustine, we're on the same page here. That to me is the most important part about any football team is your offensive line. If you've got a terrible offensive line and a great quarterback, your great quarterback ain't going to be able to do much. You got to have a great offensive line, and a great offensive line can make any quarterback look serviceable, right? And the same thing, if you have an offensive line that can run block, that's what Washington, the Commanders, that's what they're the beneficiary of, is getting a great offensive line anchored by Tyler Biotish, who can, you know, pass block and run block. And now the quarterback doesn't have to try to do it all on his own and make these miracle plays. They can just happen as they happen. I wish there was an award for like the MVP of the offensive line. But then again, like how do you say one person on this offensive line is more valuable than the other rest of the offensive line, right? So to me, it should be every year. It should be an offensive lineman. I agree with that 100%. But we have to give the quarterbacks all the love, right? Like apparently the MVP now has become nothing but a quarterback award. Augustine goes on to saying, let's be honest, a mediocre running back could have performed amazing with those O lines. I don't know if I'm going to go that far, right? Because Philadelphia's offensive line objectively got worse without having Jason Kelsey there. And we see, last year they couldn't really get the running game going. This year, Philadelphia with Saquon Barkley, like obviously it's like a match made in heaven, right? Like you have a great offensive line and a great running back, you're going to be able to do amazing things. The same thing last year with Baltimore and Derrick Henry, right? Like, yeah, you had Justice Hill, but you also had Gus Edwards. The Gus bus was back there. And it was Lamar Jackson basically running for his life, having to do everything on his own. Still a really good offensive line. But you talk about a perfect marriage in those running backs being with those offensive lines. So, yeah, they could make an average running back look maybe above average. But whenever you've got a great running back with a great offensive line, now you've created something, right? Like, I could only imagine what Rico Dowdle would have done behind Philadelphia's offensive line. And then you see, like, with Tony Pollard, how far he falls off at the end of the season, because at one point he was leading the NFL in rushing. How far he falls off whenever Tennessee's offensive scheme gets figured out in 3 weeks, right? Like, that shows you some of the stuff that's going on with that. Good morning to you, Tommy Cananza. Glad that you were tuned in over on YouTube. Augustine saying, yes, Barkley and Henry are great, but those O-lines, they could done anything. But with those O-lines, they could have done anything, is what he was saying there. Again, I'm like Ron Burgundy, man. Like, I read words that are right in front of me. I apologize. I should be better at this. But, yeah, like, But I'm a firm believer in, like, I don't know if Derrick Henry goes to Dallas, if he has the same success. Like, I think there would still be a level of success, but I don't think it would be the same success that he has in Baltimore. And I just think that's, factual, right? Like Baltimore's offensive line incrementally better than that of the Dallas Cowboys. Medusa Designs saying good morning to you, Medusa Designs. We are currently talking about, she's over on Facebook. Look at that. We've got all the representation going on here of the different places at the tipping point with Mike Tipton is streaming. We are live on X, on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course on Roku with National Streaming Sports. Shout out to our friends over at National Streaming Sports. I was on the National Professional Sports Show yesterday, and it was a fun time being a part of a lot of those conversations. If you ever get a chance to tune into that show on Wednesday afternoons, Wednesday at 4 o'clock here in El Paso, I know that's a weird time for us, but so is 8 o'clock in the morning, and y'all are here with me, so I appreciate that. We're talking MVP. Augustine and I are getting in the weeds right now because I'm a firm believer in you can't do nothing. That right there is where you hear the ghetto come out of me, right? Like the kid from Socorro, you can't do nothing. The double negatives keep coming out every now and then. I've got to like dial it back. I've got to be, the proper sports guy, right? Like that's who I have to be. Proper sports guy. Hey everybody, sports, am I right? But you can't do jack squat without your offensive line. But I also know that you can't give the MVP to like Lane Johnson, right? Like that's just not going to happen. So the final three for the MVP voting right now are Saquon Barkley, 2,000 yards on the season. Great job by a running back because you don't really see that from running backs anymore, right? Then, of course, you have Josh Allen, a phenomenal year with Josh Allen. Actually led the league, had more rushing touchdowns than Lamar Jackson did, which I thought was insane, right? But that's something that we've got to remember is part of the Josh Allen lore, right? And then, of course, the two-time MVP, looking to get his third MVP. A phenomenal season this year. Came to an unceremonious end with Mark Andrews dropping the ball in the for the 2-point conversion. And of course, that might not have translated to a win. There was still a minute and a half left that Buffalo could have moved the ball down the field. So I mean, it's not like that was the reason why they lost, although it does really look bad whenever your tight end drops the 2-point conversion there. So I'd like to see, out of those three, who would you vote for? Maybe there's someone else that you would vote for, but as far as I'm concerned, it should be Josh Allen, right? Like, actually, let me dial that back. As far as I'm concerned, it should be Patrick Mahomes. The best player on the best team should be Patrick Mahomes, but I'm just some dude when I talk about that. I could imagine what Kansas City would be without Patrick Mahomes, and it ain't nowhere near what they are right now, right? And the same thing with like Josh Allen. What would Buffalo be without Josh Allen? I could also imagine how great the Dallas Cowboys would be if they had either Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback and not Dakota Rain Prescott, the guy that we got now. Also, if they had a coach, also if they had a good offensive line, also if they had a good defensive line. Man, it's going to be a sad year for us Dallas Cowboys fans moving into next year, man. The more I think about this team, the more I realize we are screwed. And that is not a good feeling if you are a Dallas Cowboys fan. Tommy Cananza saying that Josh Allen is the MVP in his opinion. And I, again, like, I agree. Out of all those players that are left, right, just Saquon, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen, I've got to go Josh Allen too, man. Like 3,731 yards, 28 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions on the season. But whenever you look at what he did with his legs this year, man, that to me is the separator, right? 17 rushing touchdowns for Josh Allen. How do you stop it? And the Kansas City Chiefs are in the unenviable position of having to try to stop that right now, right? Obviously, y'all know me. I want the chaos of the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl, along with the Washington Commanders, just because I want to see how fragile that Philadelphia team is and how quickly they fall apart and how hot the seat gets under Nick Sirianni. Obviously, I'm a firm believer in who comes out of the AFC is winning the Super Bowl. I don't trust Washington even though if they make it to a Super Bowl, that would be an amazing story. I don't trust them fully grasping that moment and the success this early. Dude, that would suck for Jaden Daniels because now you got to live up to that every year, right? Like that's your expectation. You came in and that was your baseline as you made it to a Super Bowl. Every year after that is you better win the Super Bowl. You didn't live up to your expectations your rookie year. That's a crappy place to be if you are Jaden Daniels. Now, I also said that I want Kansas City to win the Super Bowl with like just like the most egregious flag thrown in the second quarter that has no real impact on the game, just so that can be the storyline coming out of it. Because I think that Kansas City has done what I've done, which is just fully embrace the bad guy role, right? Like people are going to sit there and hate on you because you're great. You might as well let them hate, right? Like I think that that's what Kansas City has done, and I am all about it. I absolutely love it. People were making fun of Patrick Mahomes last year because he's like, "Oh yeah, no, we're the bad guy now. We're the bad guy now." And everyone was like, "No, you're not. Like you're the Kansas City Chiefs. You sound like Kermit the Frog. No one cares about you. We're the bad guys now." Actually, I think that's still too. I like how. What is Patrick Mahomes' voice like? Is it more? I'm like Kermit the Frog. There we go. That was closer, right? It's not easy being green whenever you're Patrick Mahomes. But I look at like Kansas City, and I just love the chaos. I love the narrative about around them, like, oh, the NFL is scripted, this and that, and blah 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 blah. Right? Like it's so funny to me because I mean we spoke about this last week. I don't have to keep doing it, but it's the amount of people that it would take to script the NFL is just an abhorrent amount of people that it would take to script things in the NFL. And for me, if that's your go-to of, oh, like obviously we know who the NFL wants to win, that's such a lazy argument. It's the same thing like calling the Dallas Cowboys the Cowgirls, right? Like come up with something better. Be better for yourself. Be better. But it's just such a lazy argument whenever you want to say, oh, the NFL is scripted. Everything in the NFL is scripted and the refs want Kansas City to win. It would take an astronomical amount of coercion and cooperation, which does not happen for the NFL to get scripted. And of course, that would be because of Jerry Jones. Like, mainly, it would just be Jerry Jones. Like, he's like, I don't stand for this. I can't stand for this nonsense. Anyway, Josh Allen to me should be the MVP. Like I said, whenever you look at what he was able to do this year, just absolutely fantastic. If you're a fantasy football player, he was your guy, right? Like 379 fantasy points. I love how that's on Pro Football Reference, by the way, is the fantasy points that they have for these players. It was supposed to be Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, and Lamar Jackson. I don't know how. And again, like I believe Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, if not the best quarterback in the NFL. But how do you give the MVP to a dude who didn't make the playoffs? Right? Like it's one of those things that there has to be a level of team success, right? Like you are the best player on the field, on the team. You have to be the guy. Shout out to Sonia Pearson, Prim and Proper Sports. Great show that she had on yesterday as well. She was a part of the national professional sports show that I was on yesterday as well. Obviously, a great conversation that we have back and forth. Also goes on to say, Sharon got to make the playoffs for MVP. I agree with you on that. In order to be the MVP, you have to, bare minimum, make the playoffs. I don't care about if you get knocked out in your first game like Jared Goff did. I don't care if, you limped in with a 10-7 record or 9-8 record, like you had just gone in, but you have to get into the dance. And obviously, at the beginning of the season, the expectations for Cincinnati was you're a Super Bowl contender. The way they started the season, it left so much to be desired. And I understand that's not all on Joe Burrow, right? Like that's on a ton of other people that surround everything that goes on with the with the Bengals, with wins and losses and all that stuff. But look at how this season was just thrown away by Cincinnati, where you had Joe Burrow, who was doing awesome things offensively for Cincinnati. Jamar Chase, a Triple Crown winner for wide receivers. The first Triple Crown winner for a wide receiver to not make the playoffs since Sterling Sharp in 1992. That's how dominant this offense was. And their defense was also pretty damn good. They were just losing games in the most heartbreaking fashion. And it goes back to one of my pet peeves, right? I think one of the first shows I did with National Streaming Sports was following that Bengals-Ravens game where the Bengals went for 2 at the end of the game instead of kicking the field goal to tie. And I always said that to me is you have to see how the game is playing out. You can't just go for 2 at random ass points in the game and think that it's going to be something that comes out to your benefit, right? Like you had them on the ropes. You tie the game, you go to overtime, anything can happen there. But if you go for 2 and you don't get it, you guarantee yourself a loss. And to me, I would rather give myself a chance than guarantee myself a loss. And I think that that's one of the things that really needs to be looked at in like sports analytics and stuff. Is I get it. Analytics is always going to tell you you got to do this and do this and do this, but you also have to have a feel for the game. And I think that that's what Dan Quinn does really well. I think that's what Dan Campbell does somewhat well. Mike McCarthy has zero feel for the game. Good luck to the Saints if he goes over to the Saints. But yeah, Prim and Proper Sports, Sonia Pearson saying, yeah, that's insane. The statistic of being the only Triple Crown winning wide receiver to not make it to the playoffs since Sterling Sharp in 1992. And since the NFL merger, there's only been 2 of them. And it's Jamar Chase and Sterling Sharp that didn't make it to the playoffs as a Triple Crown winner for the wide receiver. Sonia goes on to say Burrow will get back in there. His team didn't play like the Bengals of a couple of years ago. I feel like it's, and if y'all can go over to YouTube, to Facebook, to Instagram as well, go follow Prim and Proper Sports. I've shared some of their stuff, so if you got to, as a matter of fact, later on today, I'll share some stuff as well. So if you don't have the time right now, check me out on Instagram, on Facebook, all over the place. Go support Sonia and what she's doing over there. I always support the people that support me, so please support those people as well. But I don't think that you can say necessarily that, it's a guarantee that the Bengals will be back, right? Like the Bengals that we know are going to be back because there's so much that can change. They're like already today, like Al Golden being introduced as their new defensive coordinator. Is he going to have the exact same success that the defensive coordinator had previously, right? And I get it. Like Al Golden, I believe, was the tight ends coach with the Bengals whenever the Bengals made it to the Super Bowl and lost against the Rams, right? So he has some experience being with the Bengals. And Al Golden, if you don't know, was the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. So yeah, he's had a pretty solid defense. But as we know, defense in the NFL and defense in college football, 2 completely different worlds. And to me, there's no guarantee, right, that Joe Burrow is going to have the season that he had this year. There's no guarantee that Jamar Chase is going to have the season he had this year, that they're going to be able to establish the run the way that they did, as well as they did. And obviously, a lot of it also comes down to scheduling, right? I don't think they'll get the string of cupcakes at the end of the season that they've got, like whenever they played against Dallas, whenever they had to play against the Chargers. The Chargers were a fraudulent team. I said it on the show a bunch of times that I don't think the Chargers were really that good. Obviously, losing to Houston the way that they lost in the playoffs helped prove that. It was just one of those, like, someone had to be the last team in, It wound up being Denver, but I also thought Denver was better than the Chargers. But playing those cupcake games, right? And still, you didn't have your destiny in your hands the way that you need to have it, right? The way that you want it to be, simply because there were dumb decisions made by either the coaching staff or the players that wind up losing games for you uh in the early part of the season. Now, like, great way to end the season. I believe it was what, a 5-game win streak, but that also goes to show you you were 5-8 in some time, or 5-7 at one point whenever you played against the Dallas Cowboys. Both teams were 5-7. You end the season at like 10-7 or whatever, and you should have had it, right? Like you were right there, but you just couldn't do it because whatever. You can't have starts like that in the NFL. You have to come out and absolutely dominate. And if you slide a little bit, like what you saw with Pittsburgh, you get exploited that quickly, right? It's so hard to say that a team can be the same team because they're going to lose players. They're going to lose people off the coaching staff. We just saw their defensive coordinator left, right? Like, that's going to be stuff that happens. Look at what's going to happen to Detroit now. This is not going to be the same Detroit Lions team next year as they are this year, because you lost Ben Johnson to your in-division rival. I loved his press conference also, Ben Johnson, where he was basically saying, like, I stayed in the division just because I like beating Matt LaFleur twice a year. That, to me, that's a great troll job, bro. Like, hats off to you. I might buy a Bears jersey, or a Bears shirt. I don't think I'll buy a jersey, a Bears shirt, just to hang up back here every time Ben Johnson beats Matt LaFleur. Again, it is the Tipping Point with Mike Tipton. We are live on X, YouTube, Facebook, and of course on Roku via National Streaming Sports. Shout out to our friends over at National Streaming Sports. Remember, tomorrow we are going to have the debut of a brand new Happy Nuts commercial, www.myhappynuts.com/Mike Tipton. Go check out what they have at myhappynuts.com to see all that you can save on your male grooming needs. Guys, Valentine's Day right around the corner. You gotta make sure that you're looking your best on one of them days. Tommy Cananza going off to say he better actually be at him with Chicago now. Question mark, LOL. I'm sure that right there is another talk to text, Tommy. I apologize. I probably should have read it before I posted it up there. Now people can see that you don't know how to spell. My apologies, my guy. My apologies sincerely, my dude. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. Whenever we come back from the break, we're going to continue talking about the MVP race. Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, Lamar Jackson. Who do you got? We'll be back in just 1 minute. You all know there are hundreds of betting sites out there, but don't be fooled. Some sites are legal in some states only. Some sites pay in Bitcoin, and some sites have even been hacked. However, BetUS has been in business for over 30 years. They have future bets that are paying out in the thousands, and there's still time for you to bet on the Super Bowl, the National Championship, and even the NBA Championship. Just use the QR code right here, and it'll take you to the BetUS site. BetUS. Check it out and bet responsibly. Are you a fellow car guy? I have a 2008 Ford Mustang GT convertible, and nothing makes me happier in that car than when it's nice and clean. And you know who helps me get there? RevAutoCarCare.com. They help me get that pony looking as nice and shiny and ready for any of the car meetups that are all around the great city of El Paso. Spoil your car and go to RevAutoCarCare.com/Tipton and view all the inventory they have and find out what works for you to help make your ride shine. RevAutoCarCare.com/Tipton. Use promo code Tipton33 at checkout to save 15%. We are back on the Tipping Point with Mike Tipton. Tommy Cananza saying, stupid talk to text. I guess I gotta drive and text now. No, do not do that. Do not go that far, Tommy. I will not allow it. I am 100% against it. I'm not going to pretend like I don't do it, because I do. I'm a horrible human being. I apologize. I'm flawed. I'm a flawed person. But no more. No texting while driving, Tommy. Please, for the love of God. You're one of the people that support the show. I need you as a view. And obviously, I care about your life, my guy. Come on, you know that. Don't do that to me, Tommy. Come on. But it is a tipping point with Mike Tipton once again live on Facebook, X, YouTube, and Roku with National Streaming Sports. Prim and Proper Sports, one of the shows that you can catch on the National Streaming Sports platform. Want to give a shout out to the people that are tuned in right now. Imelda Catacosa, shout out to you for tuning in to the show over on Facebook as well. So shout out to everyone that is being a part of today's show. Now, going back to who we were talking about, the finalists for MVP. I love the list that we have right now, right? Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, Joe Burrow, Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson. The three finalists, they said, are Josh Allen, Saquon Barkley, and Lamar Jackson. And conspicuous on this list that is missing, to me at least, is Patrick Mahomes. And I get it. We get tired as sports people. We get tired of winning. There's always winner's fatigue. It's an actual thing, right? We hate dynasties, and this was a conversation that I wanted to get started yesterday on the National Professional Sports Show, but I just wasn't able to kind of get in at that moment where my guy Keith Engel, who also does a show here on National Streaming Sports, had spoken about why we hate dynasties. And I had to kind of go back and think about that, right? The last time there was a dynasty that was embraced is the 49ers of the 80s. I'm not 100% sure why, but we have that 49ers team of the 80s. And the 70s, people embrace the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Like they are winners. We love winners. And, you know, even at the college ranks, like people loved Notre Dame and people loved Texas and like all these teams that are perennial winners. Now, somewhere in there, and I think it has all to do with that team right back there. Where is it? There we go. That team right back there. That we turned on winners, right? Like the Dallas Cowboys become their dynasty, and you can question whether or not they were a dynasty. You win 3 out of 4, you're a dynasty, right? And that's where it was like, oh, well, the Cowboys, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Jerry Jones is in the news. I'm tired of it. There's a lot of cocaine going on, being done in the locker room. All of these things that are happening that we say, oh, okay, we do not like the Dallas Cowboys dynasty. Then comes the New England Patriots, right? So we're going 90s now to the 2000s and the 2010s, right? The New England Patriots. And they just beat the crap out of every possible team that there is, right? 2 losses in the, or I guess 3 losses in the Super Bowl, 2 to the Giants, 1 to the Eagles, but they made 9 Super Bowls in a 20-year span. We got tired of it. We got winner's fatigue. We wanted anybody to win but them. And then comes the new patron saint of the NFL of Patrick Mahomes. He's able to throw the ball at weird different angles, behind the back, no look, left-handed, whatever it is. He became a novelty that we loved in sports, right? We needed this guy to slay the beast, to kill Tom Brady and the New England Patriots franchise, and they did it. But then it's like, okay, now stop winning so much. Jesus, guy, like stop winning. You've made 7 straight AFC championship games. You've won 3 Super Bowls. You're looking at your 3rd in a row to get you 4 out of 6 years of going to the Super Bowl. Let other people win. We've now gotten tired of just dynasty after dynasty after dynasty because it feels like our team doesn't have a chance. But the fact of the matter is, our team doesn't have a chance most of the time. Again, in utopia, you win once every 32 years. That's utopia. That's just based off of mathematics, right? 1 out of 32. There's 32 teams. So in a best case scenario, each team wins a Super Bowl once every 32 years. Obviously, that's not the world that we live in, right? So you have those long droughts between times, between time frames, all of that good stuff. And during that time, we get tired of the teams that win. The one team that I think was immune to this, and I think it's just because people loved the guy, was the 1990s Bulls. Other than that, it always felt like people just any dynasty that we've gotten of recent time, people find a way to nitpick at them, right? In the 2000s in baseballs with the Yankees, people hated it. With the Red Sox, people hated it. With the Giants, I don't think people really cared because no one knows that the Giants won as many championships as the Giants won because no one's watching baseball. I figured that one out yesterday whenever I was apparently the only one super passionate on people not making it into the Hall of Fame because of steroids. Get over yourself, baseball writers. Tommy Canasta saying, so you're saying we only got to wait 4 more years? In utopia. In utopia. Jaime Pinkman on X saying people hate consistent winners. Everyone hated Brady for winning. No one could dethrone him. Now Mahomes is the winner and fans hate him and they want to see another team win. 100%. I don't. Again, you can see the flag back there, the Texas Tech flag. I am a Texas Tech fan. Patrick Mahomes being the quarterback over at Texas Tech. I'm loving it, right? I'm also one of these people. I love pissing people off. I was trying to think of another way to say it, but there's no other way to say it. I love making people mad. So whenever the Kansas City Chiefs win, I got a ton of friends that are Kansas City Chiefs fans. I remind them that they used to be the Dallas Texans. So without the Dallas Cowboys becoming the Dallas Cowboys, the Dallas Texans never moved to Kansas City and become the Kansas City Chiefs. Therefore, your success for your franchise is based off of the Dallas Cowboys. You're welcome. Also, I just take it as another win for Dallas, right? Like that's a win for Dallas. The Dallas Texans won themselves another Super Bowl. Look at that. Dallas, the city of Dallas, 9-time Super Bowl champions. Man, I'm about it. I also say that stuff just to make people mad. One of these days, like I'm gonna get my comeuppance, right? Like there's gonna be people. I feel like Augustine is one of them. Mireya, I know whenever she's on, she's one of them. Though they just love to like poke and just poke and poke and poke the bear until they see something that comes out. Jaime going on. I saw you that you were watching, my guy. Jaime saying, "Hey, I'm a San Francisco Giants fan, and I thought they were never gonna win. I am also a Giants fan because I first saw the El Paso Sun Kings Giants farm team. Man, that's awesome." I've also just personally here, just so you guys know some of the stuff that I am working on here with the Tipton Sports Broadcasting Network. I am working on a documentary where we are going to be highlighting, and we've already done some of the interviews. We're going to be doing fan interviews coming up next, but I am working on a documentary where we are highlighting former El Paso Diablos owner Jim Paul and the contributions that the El Paso Diablos made to how we know what Major League Baseball, yes, Major League Baseball is now. Some of the ideas that started for baseball here in El Paso. So that to me is going to be a fun documentary. Hopefully, whenever that comes out, y'all go out there and support that. Once again, a production from us over here at Tipton Sports Broadcasting Network. Jaime is already tuned in, or I guess penciled in, as one of the guests that's going to be a part of that documentary as we are trying to show a little bit of love to the former El Paso Diablos owner, Jim Paul, and all the cool things that he did, saving baseball, literally saving baseball in the city of El Paso. Now, we hate winners. Let me rephrase that. Most people hate winners, not me. I love it. I love it, man. B. Grant saying, good morning, Des. Good morning to you, B. Hope that you were doing well today, my guy. I am tired though of the narrative of we've got to like not give greatness their due, right? And it goes back to back in the day with Michael Jordan. Jordan should have won every MVP award whenever he was playing because he was, without a shadow of a doubt, the best player in the NFL. There is no way, none, that anyone can convince me that even this year, that Patrick Mahomes isn't the best quarterback or the best player in the NFL. Just absolutely no way. look at what he has on his team and compare it to the other teams that are in the conference championship games. Yes, Washington, and people can say this all they want, and I think this was a debate that we were having yesterday as well. I think Washington's team is much better than people are giving them credit for. I like Zacchaeus. I like Terry McLaurin. I like Zach Ertz. I think Brian Robinson is a great running back. I've had him on my fantasy team for a couple of years. It's one of those dynasty leagues. I've had him on my fantasy team. He's done really well for your boy. I also lead the league in drafting players that get shot. So maybe that's something I need to just stop drafting players, because apparently him and Ricky Pearsall are always just going to be that. They have a good offensive line. They have a good defense. They've had a good defense for the last couple of years. This is a team that I'm surprised by, but I feel like we shouldn't be surprised by. I feel like this team has done, but like they've been flying under the radar, and now you got yourself a rookie quarterback. How's next year going to be? We don't know. But compare that team to what you got in Kansas City. If they had Rashee Rice, I'd feel so much better, right? But you don't really have a number one wideout guy. Xavier Worthy, we thought was going to be that guy, but you know that he needs to have Rice there to kind of help him out. At the tight end position, obviously, the Kansas City Chiefs are going to have the advantage head-to-head against Washington, at least I believe. Offensive line, Washington's offensive line is better. Defense, people can question whether or not the defenses are the same. I think it's a push. Although I think that Kansas City's defense is really good and they don't get the credit they deserve. At quarterback, it's obviously Mahomes. Out of the quarterbacks that are left, the only one that you would say maybe, just maybe, I'll take this guy over Mahomes is Josh Allen. And even then, I don't think you're doing it because you truly believe it. I think you're doing it just because you want to be a contrarian and not give Patrick Mahomes his flowers. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the NFL. The best player on the best team should win the MVP. And I'm a firm believer that if you take Patrick Mahomes off of the Kansas City Chiefs and you replace him with any of these other quarterbacks that are on or that are in the championship games this weekend, Kansas City isn't nearly as good as what they are, and that team is automatically the Super Bowl favorite by far. Imagine Patrick Mahomes with the Philadelphia Eagles. Imagine Patrick Mahomes with the speed that the Commanders have. That to me is that's going to be an issue, or that would be the hypothetical issue, right? Like that would be a nightmare scenario for a lot of the teams that are out there. Now, obviously, we don't live in the world of what ifs. We live in the world of what is, right? Tommy Carranza pushing back on me talking about how good the Commanders are, saying Brian Robinson wasn't good till this year. Zach Ertz has been washed for about 4 years now. Mohamed Zacchaeus and Brown were considered busts until this year. Jaden Daniels elevated those guys. I agree with you. Jaden Daniels elevated those guys. I think it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday. Where Terry McLaurin has been in the NFL since 2019 or 2018. I've got to get it right, but I believe it was 2018. And he's caught a touchdown pass from 10 different quarterbacks. 10 different quarterbacks in that time frame. A lot of it has to do with you finally got a quarterback that can actually do something, right? Like you've got a guy who gives you another outlet. Whenever you got Case Keenum and Carson Wentz and Marcus Mariota and like these guys as your quarterback, I think one of them was a Kevin Allen or something like that. The guy that was a backup in Carolina that had one good game and somehow got himself a huge contract to be a starting quarterback in Washington, right? Like he's had so many different quarterbacks. And like obviously Ron Rivera being the coach, right? Like there's obviously going to be these issues on things. I think it was just they couldn't maximize based off of who they had. Tommy Canazzo continued to go on saying Brian Robinson benefited from the threat of Jaden Daniels taking off in that option offense. Exactly. You've got yourself a guy now, and you have to have that ability, right? Like that's the issue that Dallas Cowboys have all the time with Dak Prescott. Dallas Cowboys fans, I should say, have with Dak Prescott is maybe he should just take off and run once in a while. But I also say Dak Prescott has like the legs of the oldest man in the building. It seems like Dak Prescott is the slowest quarterback in the history of the NFL. Like, I feel like every single one of us that are a part of this show today can outrun Dak Prescott. And I don't even think it's difficult. I just think it's Dak Prescott is extremely slow. Extremely slow. Tommy Canazzo going on to say Terry is legit, but those other guys are just JAGs. That's just a guy, right? Like if you don't know what that is, what a JAG is, it's just a guy. I don't know, man. Like I feel like next year we'll see. Next year I think we'll see a little bit of a come up. I don't think, and again, like it's impossible to say that Washington will be back in the NFC Championship game. I think what they've done to themselves is give themselves such an unattainable goal for the future that it's going to be extremely difficult for them to be able to make it back this far. I think that they will succumb ultimately to the weight of expectations. But I think that they're still going to have a pretty decent year next year, right? Dallas is going to be on the downslide. The Giants are going to be the Giants. At least the Cowboys aren't the Giants. But, trying to overcome Philadelphia. There's going to be teams that are out there that are going to be better, right? Like, I believe Atlanta is going to be better with Michael Penix. Love me a lefty quarterback with Michael Penix getting the full season as starting quarterback. No more Kirko. Sad. I wish maybe Kirko can go be like the backup in Dallas or something like that. That'd be fun. Take over the job from Dak. I think Kirko and Dak are basically the same dude. Medusa Design saying it can go either way. Two scenarios: Russell Wilson at the Seahawks and then the Broncos. He just didn't click at first. And Tom Brady from the Patriots and the Bucks, definitely an asset to the team. So it depends on who you have as receivers and how much you click. 100%, right? Like, and I think that that's what it comes down to is now you have a coaching staff that you have faith in Washington. You have players that just, you can tell, love each other. And now you have a quarterback where you don't have to worry about the guy over your shoulder. Marcus Mariota was never going to be the guy. Sam Howell was never going to be the guy, right? Like, and that's what they had in Washington was these guys, dudes that were just perennial backups, knowing that you can say, okay, this is a starting quarterback. Carson Wentz, really? Yeah, and it's weird that Carson Wentz threw a touchdown to Terry McLaurin. But Marcus Mariota, Case Keenum, again, Carson Wentz, Sam Howell. Like, I mean, you can go over this list of just guy after guy after guy that's not a guy. Now you have a quarterback. How well is he going to be in the future? I don't know, because everyone would have said this year, CJ Stroud, going into the season, CJ Stroud, the better quarterback out of he and Bryce Young. Bryce Young, to me, balled at the end of the season. Whenever he came back after being benched for Andy Dalton, that dude was playing out of his GD mind. All of us, maybe not all of us, I'll take that back. I will be contrite and I will be genuine in my assessment of Russell Wilson. Whenever he went to Denver, me saying, oh, he's washed. The W in Wilson stands for washed. This dude is done, right? At one point, he had more bathrooms in his house than he had touchdown passes for a season for the Denver Broncos. That was an actual thing. And I mean, we're talking about like week 14 of the season. He still hasn't overcome how many bathrooms he has in his house. I want to say it was like 12 for touchdowns. That was a real thing that I was monitoring like the hater that I am. But look at what he did in Pittsburgh this year. I'm a firm believer if Russell Wilson isn't the quarterback in Pittsburgh, they get nowhere near the playoffs. Mike Tomlin has his first losing season if Russell Wilson's not the quarterback in Pittsburgh. Who was he throwing the ball to? He just had one guy, George Pickens, who none of us would sit back and say, that's a guy that I can rely on. What's Russ going to do next year? Is Pittsburgh going to bring him back? Like that type of stuff, right? I believe that that's what Washington has right now. Is they finally got through once again the Andy Dufresne crawling through the river of excrement to get to the outside and just maybe have a chance to do something, to escape something. Again, I say it as a metaphor. It was a literal thing. There were sewage lines busted in that disgusting stadium that the Washington Commanders play in. Also, a little side note, whenever I first got out of the Air Force, I was living in North Carolina. And I did a job interview in Washington, D.C. And one of the first questions they asked me in this job interview was, we see that you're from Texas. Are you a Dallas Cowboys fan? And I said, I 100% am. And they said, well, would you be okay working with people that are Washington fans? And I said, of course I would. Like, they're losers. Like, obviously they're going to be losers, but I won't judge them. And as the interview went on, it was a really good interview. They kept saying, man, but that Dallas Cowboys thing, like, that's going to be a thing. Like, here in Washington, D.C., it's going to be a thing. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to get this job in Washington, D.C. because I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. And I absolutely loved it. And I was like, you know what? I get it, I guess. Right. But like, obviously, you're not going to find someone more qualified than your boy. But it was just funny that was part of the hiring process was, are you a Cowboys fan? What if I had just been like, no. And then I show up to work just decked out, like one of those annoying, like the big, huge foam hat, like the star finger type stuff, looking just like Jerry Jones drunk off of Johnny Walker Blue. Man, I should have done that. I should have been, no, guys, I'm not. But then, you know what? Different career trajectory. I wouldn't have done this. So there we go. Like, who knows? I would not be doing sports right now. My life would probably be incrementally better, and so would yours for not having to deal with me. That's a joke, guys. That's a joke. Hopefully you think it's a joke. But yeah, Washington to me, that's a team on the come up, but I don't think that they're going to reach the expectations. Right? Like, they've given themselves this year a bar so high that it's going to be almost impossible for them to be able to reach it. And the reason why I say that is because the team that we're looking at this year is going to be much different next year. A lot of their impact players, the Dexter Fowlers, the Tyler Biadishes, people like that, are on one-year deals. Therefore, in free agency, there's going to be people, once again, plucked away, done all this stuff, right? Like, is Cliff Kingsbury going to continue to be the offensive coordinator there? I would like Cliff Kingsbury as a head coach in Dallas. Like, honestly, I would. Again, that might be the Texas Tech thing going for me, but I would love to see Cliff Kingsbury as a head coach in Dallas. It's just it's just one of those, like, Washington, I feel bad for him because this is great for them. But it also feels like they are not ever going to get back to this level. And that's going to be an issue, right? Like, all the success Dan Quinn is having now you've set this as this is your expectation. Look at what you did with the rookie quarterback with just a guy, like a bunch of just the guys, as Tommy Cananza was saying. What can you do whenever we load this team up with talent? And the fact of the matter is I still don't believe, even though they beat Detroit, even though they beat Tampa, again, the sun shines on the dog's ass every now and then. I don't believe that they're going to be the best team in the NFL or in the NFC. Tommy Cananza going on to say defensive coordinators will figure out Washington's offense in year 2 won't be as great a year for Daniels as year 1 was for Daniels. Mark my words. Oh, I'm 100% with you. That's why I'm always cautious in crowning a rookie quarterback as like the next guy, right? Because how do you bounce back? And it takes a lot to be able to bounce back. And you have to be able to kind of look at yourself and say, this is what I need to change. Now, I will say this, Jaden Daniels being a rookie this year, we have to remember he spent 5 years in college. So he's got a lot of starts with him. I believe he'll find a way to adapt, but I don't think next year is going to be as good as this year, Tommy. I agree with you 100% on that. Jaime is saying, my brother was at Washington, D.C., and a USAF fan at Langley Air Force Base were harassed by Redskins fans, but that was back in the 90s, and said his friend from the United States or in the Air Force in El Paso. Yeah, like, no, I totally get it, but I'm also the dude, like, I wanted to go to a game in Yankees or in Boston, just decked out in a bunch of New York Yankees stuff just to piss people off. Like, that's how I am. I've gone to Houston to watch the San Antonio Spurs. Yeah, bypass San Antonio to go to Houston. I've been to Dallas to watch the Spurs, just decked out in all my Spurs gear, knowing what they know as fans, that the Spurs were just going to be better. And they were a lot better. Sorry, Tommy. I felt like that was a personal dig at you. I was looking directly in the camera, too, like, the Spurs, Tommy, you know it. Over that 20-year period, were so much better. So much better. That's me as a fan. Tommy Canazza saying it's going to be Schottenheimer in Dallas. I wouldn't be surprised if they announced it today or tomorrow. Shake my head. Man, and the Dallas Cowboys offense to me did nothing that made you say that you wanted to bring in Brian Schottenheimer, right? Like, it's just one of those things. Tommy Canazza saying hashtag Yankees suck, hashtag Spurs suck. Man, my guy, I feel like you're coming right at me. What did I do? I know. I started it, Tommy. I apologize. It's just, I mean, the Mavericks, man, like, they're bad. They'll always be bad. I remember as a kid, like, the 1990s version of the Dallas Mavericks with, like, Mark Aguirre and Fat Lever, like, those types of players. Man, I have way too much useless knowledge in my head. Derek Harper as, like, their main point guard, right? Those 1990s Mavs teams were terrible, and I always just equate that, right? Like, oh, man, that's what the Mavs are going to be, are those terrible 1990s teams that Fat Lever was the main guy on. Actual name, too, Fat Lever. Love it. Could also be used as an innuendo, like Fat Lever, pause. Is that what we're doing? Hey, yo. Is that what it is? Red Sox, Mavs, Cowboys. Cowboys. I'm messing with you. My guy. The Red Sox, gross. Can't believe you would tell people about that. That's like telling people you got an STD. It's disgusting. When are you going to get that cured? I guess it's like, you can't get it removed. So I guess you kind of legally have to tell people about it, right? Like, the Red Sox are the herpes of sports. All right, everybody. I want to thank you so much. What a way to end the show. I want to thank you all so much for tuning into the show. Tomorrow, we will be back again live 5 days a week now on National Streaming Sports. It's awesome, this partnership that we've got with them over at National Streaming Sports. A big shout out to everyone that was a part of today's show. I appreciate the love and the support. Remember, check us out online, tiptonsports.com. We got some merch that we're going to be trying to sell over there as well. We've got a lot of Dallas and Philadelphia stuff right now just for that rivalry, but we're going to be adding to it as the weeks come and go. The Boston Red Sox, if there's one thing I want you to remember from today's show, is that the Boston Red Sox are the herpes of sports. We'll see you all tomorrow, guys.